So on Tuesday, they moved forward with this, getting out of bankruptcy with a Chapter 11 reorganization. A representative for Diamond Sports, they run the regional sports network under the name Bally, says the company hopes to file a reorganization plan that will allow confirmation of hearings at some point within the first half of November. Now, Bally did get out of their deals with the Mavericks and the Pelicans because basically they can't afford to pay the rights fees for there. But the saga goes on because Major League Baseball is unhappy with this new agreement and are basically stating that there will be uncertainty as to when opening day begins on April the 1st of next year. So they're not happy. They want basically either the money or out of this deal. And a bankruptcy court says that they're going to take Major League Baseball's claims very seriously and going to meet again in October to see if there's more validity to it. So do we have an answer on Diamond? No, we do not. But it does appear that at least the national basketball games that you watch on your local affiliate on your RSN and your hockey games that you watch on your local affiliate on RSN, it looks like those are going to be broadcast in different markets across the country. All right, now let's get to the American Gaming Association and some news there. Seems like they're pretty unhappy with this report that was released by the University of Bristol in England, basically finding that 75% of the non-sponsored social media content that's put out by the four major sports books, they're saying that BetMGM, DraftKings, ESPN, Bet, and FanDuel don't comply with the AGA's responsible gaming code. The AGA says, no, we are doing that, and this is a irresponsible misinterpretation of the code. So needless to say, responsible gaming still enforced here in the United States, but there are countries that are saying that we're not doing a good job of it. We will see. New AP Top 25 poll. One of the favorites to get into the college football playoff was from the ACC. FSU, no longer the case. FSU now out of the top 25 poll. Georgia's still the number one team in the country. As you see, Texas is there at number 3. Guess who they play this week? They play Michigan. So one of those two teams is going to move up or down after the week. Friday night is the opening night of the NFL in Brazil. Devin White, their linebacker on the Philadelphia Eagles, he's not going to play in this game. He has been deemed out by the Eagles with their injury report that came out this morning, so he will not play on Friday night. Cam Hayward, defensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers, signs a contract extension, 3 years, $45 million. It is extension season. The Jets have extended Michael Carter II. He got a 3-year, $30.75 million contract with the New York Jets. Bill Belichick is making his way through the media. He signs on with another media company to open the season. He is now working with the 33rd team as strategic advisor. In addition, he's with the CW, also ESPN and Underdog as well. The 49ers are set to start their season. Trent Williams, although they're putting the ink on that contract in finality, looks like he's going to be able to play on Monday night. Brandon Ayuk also in tow. Christian McCaffrey practiced this week as well. And naturally speaking, Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams talked about their contracts getting done. Very excited to be back with the team.
I think, I'm not going to lie, I made it a little bit more difficult than it needed to at the end. But yeah, it was, I mean, it was like that from I'm not going to say the whole entire time, but for about the past month, I think we were pretty good.
We had conversations. I didn't think that it would get this drawn out, but it's a tough business, and this was a very intricate contract. I wouldn't call it a dispute, but restructure. So it took time to get to where both sides feel like it's a win-win, and we had discussions in minicamp, and kind of knew that it could draw out a little bit just because there was other people on the table that, obviously it was a lot of pressing needs. So, I didn't think it'd go this long, but it is what it is. We actually retained a really good rapport during the whole time I was away.
Williams did say that once Ricky Pearsall was shot, their wide receiver, he wanted to be with him, and that's one of the reasons why he rejoined the 49ers. All right, let's get to some college football news here and some notes here. Victoria Bowles, she survived that fatal car wreck that killed the University of Georgia football player back in January of 2023. She settled her claims against the school, but she's keeping her lawsuit against Philadelphia Eagles defensive lineman Jalen Carter alive for the time being. Jaden Ott, probable going into the weekend for Cal. They play at Auburn. Auburn 13-point favorites. Iowa State's Caleb Bacon is out following surgery, and he is going to miss some time, and there's a chance he could return later in the season. Welcome back to Newswire. Time for us to head over to the library in Michigan to join our friend Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. He's back with us for another round of sports betting talk, legalization talk, and got some news on an offshore sports book as well. Pat, great to catch up with you here again, and great to see you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Great as always to be back. It's never a dull time with you, Craig.
No, it isn't. It is never a dull time. It looks like more books, by the way. Are you adding books to that library, Pat? It
Yes,
feels like it's thicker back there.
You'll notice right over here. There's even more. There, it's my wife and I like to read. Some might say it's a problem, but I don't because I write for a living. So
I understand. Understatement of the year. You like to read. Understatement of the year looking there. But let's not indict him for that. I mean, it's great to read. I agree with that sentiment. All right, Pat. Well, I read your column over at Legal Sports Report last week. What is going on here in Missouri? I mean, this is like, it feels like we get closer, we get further away from them legalizing sports betting here. But and we know that there are some people that do not want sports betting there, but it does feel like the push continues. But there is a lawsuit that is currently in the way of some of this. Tell us more about it. I don't want to ruin the story before.
Yeah, of course. To set the tone of it, I mean, we have to remember that the last 3 years there's been legislative pushes to get sports betting over the, finish line and legalized in Missouri, and it just hasn't happened, largely because of one senator, Denny Hoskins, who's wanted to tie video lottery terminals to the legislation, and nobody else wanted to do that. So that it fell short. Well, Bill DeWitt III from the St. Louis Cardinals was like, we got to do it a different way. He started with all the other professional sports teams in the state a giant ballot petition to get it on the ballot less than 2 months away. Well, here we are 2 months away again. And as I just said, and we've got a lawsuit challenging the certification process of that ballot petition. And it's kind of a mystery of who's behind this. We know there's two Democratic consultants who are the plaintiffs in this case, but they're backed and led by a Republican attorney. He's the chair of the Republican Lawyers Association, National Lawyers Association. So that's a strange bedfellows. He's done a lot with the Missouri Gaming Association, which represents the casinos in the state, which has been kind of quiet in terms of this whole ballot petition and now this lawsuit. It has not issued a statement around either of them. And so this is just a kind of a big question of who's actually behind this, because there's some kind of interesting bedfellows here. The hearing is tomorrow, the first hearing at least. Maybe there could be more, or it could be settled tomorrow. We'll find out. And we'll go from there. I mean, there has been industry talk before the lawsuit. Multiple sources had told me that Caesars and Penn Entertainment weren't very happy with how the ballot language was set up, because rather than how it was in the legislation, where each casino gets a couple skins, now only the casino operator gets one skin. And that's interesting because Penn and Caesars both have 3 casinos in the state. And then you look at, there's 2 standalone licenses, which you have to assume would probably go to DraftKings and FanDuel. So you're taking away the tethering, and that's a whole thing. But there's no connection between them and the lawsuit, at least as of yet. It would be completely unfair to them to say they are at this point. So anyway, it's going to be a very interesting day tomorrow and potentially the next 2 months as we get to see who's going to vote, or if Missourians will get to vote at all. Because if they don't win it, then it'll go off the ballot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's really the key, but it does feel like, at least, and on a follow-up to your story, as far as the polling is concerned, this is the strongest support that the polls have shown. We've seen previous polls from people in Missouri, more than 50% of people wanting sports betting there, but it seems like that number is climbing as we continue to talk about it.
Yeah, it's been fairly kind of 50-50 the whole time, but the latest poll is very strong in terms of that 50%. 50% fully support it, then another 21 are kind of undecided. And it was kind of an interesting, go to the story at Legal Sports Report. We break it down a little bit more from the St. Louis University and YouGov poll. But, overwhelming support from men. Democrats support it quite a bit more than Republicans, but not too bad. I think Republicans were about 44%. Democrats were 58%. Urban areas, Kansas City, St. Louis, very much for it. But once you get out to the rural areas, and again, the data kind of showed that people who make more money and people who are more educated are for sports betting, which was kind of an interesting takeaway for me. But yeah, right now, the professor who was kind of behind it said, this looks like it's a no-brainer. It'll get passed in November. Again, that's dependent on this hearing tomorrow, potentially. But right, yeah, as you said, the numbers right now are really a good situation.
Yeah, stronger than they've been, is fair to say. And I think that it's also fair to say, as we get closer here, the more we talk about a state getting sports betting legalized as a possibility, it seems like the stronger chance there is, even if not now, but maybe for the future. All right, so let's close it out here with this story that I'll never understand. Still to this day, I don't get it. I don't understand it. You can try and explain it to me. There are offshore sports betting sites that have been around for decades. And even with the legalization of sports betting, they continue to operate illegally overseas, everywhere. And so there's a story that you guys have up over at Legal Sports Report. I'm trying to understand this one. Louisiana is not happy that a company called Bovada, who's been around as long as I can remember, are operating illegally in their state, as they are operating illegally in every state. So there is a cease and desist. What does this even mean? Like, okay, like they've got a cease and desist, but like none of these operators offshore ever abide by these. So what is different about this?
Well, see, that's kind of the interesting part. Is to your point, for a while it didn't seem it was making any difference that they were sending these cease and desists or telling these companies to stop operating. But this is just kind of the latest state that I think is starting to make a change in how this is happening. Earlier this year, we saw Michigan, my state, Michigan up here, send a cease and desist to Bovada and a bunch of sweepstakes companies last year, a couple other, illegal operators, and they've shut down, including Bovada. Bovada now has shut down in, I think it's 11 U.S. markets, 10 states and D.C., from states, regulators sending a cease and desist saying you can't operate here anymore. And this kind of goes back, I think it was 2 years ago, the American Gaming Association sent a letter to Bovada, or to the Attorney General, saying, can you help us crack down on illegal sports betting or illegal gambling operators from offshore? That was followed up last year by Michigan regulators and I think 7 signee states to the Attorney General saying the same thing. We need help. Well, then Michigan started doing it. We've seen West Virginia do it. We've seen New Jersey do it. We're seeing Massachusetts do it. Louisiana, just the latest. Charles Hebert, the new Louisiana Gaming Control Board chairman, talked about it a little bit at his meeting last month and said, we've seen a lot of states do it. It's working. We want to make sure that our consumers are protected, that our market's protected, that we're a regulated, safe market that creates taxes and maintains consumer protections. And as of right now, we haven't seen Bovada pull out of Louisiana, but I wouldn't be fully surprised if they do. Just be based on the recent activity. They just pulled out of Ohio last week or last month. So yeah, really interesting. To your point, during the commercial break, you mentioned, or you said, this is something we're probably going to battle for the next 20 years. It might be forever. Forever. These operators continue to pop up. They find loopholes in different regulations to make it so they don't necessarily break any laws. Bovada fully is an offshore illegal market, but there's plenty of gray market, as we call them, when they're kind of fitting through the regulations. So yeah, this is something, to your point in the break, is something we're going to be dealing with for a long time. So this is not the last story. I'm sure we'll talk about CNDs. Yeah.
And by the way, Bovada, if I'm not mistaken, operates under Bodog outside of the United States, I think, and they could just change the V to an end, and now they're Bonata and still just operating. And I mean, honestly, like I don't know. Like, I get it, and I understand them trying to stop these companies, but if they're operating offshore, I don't know how you do it. I'm not trying to advocate it. I'm just saying the reality. Anyway, all right, Pat. Great to catch up with you. Good stuff. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, Craig.